Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wondered if there's more to your dreams than meets the eye, and if you could wake up and explore your dream world to benefit your days, then do we have the Lucid Dreaming Show for you. Today we'll be talking with Andrew Holecek, author of The Power and the Pain, Preparing to Die, Meditation in the Eye Generation, and an incredible book I think will make a huge difference in our lives, Dream Yoga. And that's just what we'll be talking about today, how to wake up in your dreams and illuminate your life through lucid dreaming and the Tibetan yogas of sleep. That plus we'll talk about what in the world is an Oniranaut, learning to sleep sitting up, what you can learn from taking your dog to the dog park, why you might want to fly in your dreams and put your hands through walls, and the spiritual benefit to giving yourself the finger. So
you summed up the book beautifully.
Woohoo! Welcome to the show, Andrew. Are you ready to shine?
It's great to be here, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here, Andrew, and a mighty woohoo! So before we dive right into things, would you mind taking us back in time and telling us about your first two jobs after completing a double degree program in your mid-20s?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I got out of this rather intensive 5-year undergraduate curricula and was trying to decide which direction to take in my life. So I took a year off and spent the first half of that year working in a maximum security federal prison, which was a really interesting job, to put it mildly, for someone in his early 20s, to see that kind of shadow element. And then the second half of that kind of off year before I did go to graduate school was working as a surgical orderly. So the juxtaposition of kind of social and physical dis-ease really transformed me. I mean, it was a powerful, eye-opening experience because I had lived a kind of a sheltered, protected life, which I obviously appreciated, but it kept me away from some aspects of reality that, turned out to be really quite transformative for me. So yeah, that's how I spent my year between graduate and undergraduate studies.
Yeah, talk about a life and death year. So you were exploring TM. You had started that a couple years earlier. And what happened that really rocked your dream world?
Yeah, I had, this was like, this is a way back, getting on almost 40 years back. And I was deeply involved in what is now retrospectively referred to as the New Age. So the New Age was developing in those years, and I was deeply involved in things like Edgar Cayce and the Seth material. Kind of the whole channeling medium was really big in those days. And as I mentioned in the book, this really kind of profoundly transformative experience, whereas I was delving into this material, elevated, you could say, in a kind of psychospiritual domain, this kind of ivory tower of spirituality, contrasted by this, kind of harsh experience of the relative world. I started having all these just powerful regular dreams. They weren't really lucid at that point, just a great deal of heightened dream states. And there just was this kind of ineffable sense of anticipation that I felt like something was impending or coming. And, in February of that year, I had, in retrospect, this kind of spiritual breakthrough where I spontaneously entered this altered state. And for a period of about 2 weeks, was living, you can almost say living the dream, where
I was that.
Yeah, my evenings were characterized by almost constant lucid dreams, which, of course, a lucid dream is when you're dreaming and you're aware of it. You're aware of the fact that you're in the dream while still maintaining the dream. So I was having fairly constant lucid dreams almost every night. And my daytime experience, interestingly, became increasingly illusory or dream-like. And what happened was this kind of merging of these two otherwise disparate states of consciousness. My dream world became increasingly more real. My so-called waking reality became increasingly more dreamlike, until I had a challenging time discerning when I was literally awake or asleep, awake or dreaming. And it was entertaining for a little while, but as you might suspect, because I didn't really have the psychic grounding, after a while, it became increasingly disconcerting and then eventually kind of panicky. I started to lose my sense of reference. I felt like if I wasn't careful, I really could be losing my grounding in terms of reality. In other words, losing my mind. So what started out as a really kind of exhilarating, refreshing kind of spiritual breakthrough was replaced with this increasing anxiety that, this may not be enlightenment. Maybe this is madness. So I shut the whole thing down. I really started to
This was precipitated by large quantities of beer.
Yeah. Well, actually, large quantities of beer kind of saved me, so to speak. Is what I did, Michael. Is I basically said, I'm not sure I can handle this. So I was working back in Michigan at the time, and I'm still a big ski fanatic. So I basically jumped in my Volkswagen Beetle and roared out to Colorado with my ski buddies. And as I mentioned in the introduction to my book, I basically drank and skied my way back to reality. But something really changed. I mean, it was really a before and after experience. I mean, I did come back to some sense of normalcy, and I started to tiptoe back into this domain of experience that I had, and so began a real passion, which has turned out to be a 40-year passion of the study and practice of the night, the nocturnal meditations, of which I can, provide a bit of a spectrum of. So I started reading everything I could, Freud, Jung, everything that was available. There wasn't a ton in the world of lucid dreaming back then. I mean, this is well before it was scientifically proven. There was just a few kind of pop books on dream interpretation. So there wasn't a great deal of reference. And so I started to scramble outside of the domain of classic kind of psychological approaches to dreaming. And then one day, really almost by process of elimination, just by studying all these different traditions, I stumbled across the Buddhist tradition and was immediately taken by the fact that the Buddha literally, etymologically, is, of course, the awakened one. So that all of a sudden rang some bells. And then,
Well, you posed it well in the book. Awakened from what?
Yeah, awakened from what and to what? So I said, wow, now this is interesting. So I really started diving into the world of Buddhism, and then in particular, originally it was Zen, and then eventually Tibetan Buddhism. And when I came across the teachings on dream yoga, which are a big part of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, I really felt like I had come home, because this was the first body of literature that I'd come across that was really able to describe what I had gone through, more or less. And that's transformative. When you're just reading about something and you find yourself nodding your head all the time, I just said, geez, maybe I'm a Buddhist. I just really didn't know it. And so that was the path that really helped me substantiate what I went through.
So what is to define it? We've kind of got a concept of lucid dreaming. Maybe we should define both, lucid dreaming and then dream yoga.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I like to refer to these, and there are a couple others too that we could at least kind of to complete the picture. I like to refer to these as the kind of nocturnal meditations. And in lucid dreaming, the distinctions, there are some classic distinctions, but obviously the higher bandwidths of lucid dreaming do kind of bleed into dream yoga. But for purposes of definition, lucid dreaming is a scientifically proven state of mind where you wake up in the dream state. And for the most part, it's used initially for entertainment, which is, I still use it that way. It's really the ultimate in home entertainment.
Let's go flying!
You're the author, the writer, the producer, the main actor, and the script of your wildest imagination. Mm-hmm. And this is why it's sexy, it sells, it's marketable. And I say, one of the definition ways I define it is it's primarily used for purposes of self-fulfillment, self-satisfaction.
You did mention an interesting purpose that I had never thought of as being a coach for elite athletes in the past. I had never thought, I thought of planning hypnotic or hypnagogic suggestions before bedtime, to have those programs run in my athlete's head through the night, and my own head when I was a professional athlete myself. But I never thought of taking it to the next step and training in your dreams.
Yes, that's right. And you can do that. There are scientists in Germany who are really actively pursuing this. And again, it's one of the many, we'll come back to the definition of dream yoga, but there are many, many benefits behind lucid dreaming proper, let alone dream yoga. And in fact, when you dive into it, it's really almost too good to be true. There's so many benefits here. Even I have to go through and I'm like reread the literature. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe there's this potential here. And it might be interesting to talk about why. Why is this arena so fruitful? But yes, what happens in a lucid dream is that neurologically speaking, the brain and therefore the body cannot tell the difference between something that's dreamt and something that's experienced. And we know this in in certain really erotic dreams. For instance, you can have an orgasm in your dream that has a physical correlate. So what happens in the world of lucid dreaming is that lucid dreams can be used. You can quite literally rehearse physical activity in the dream state. And then, of course, using the tenets of neuroplasticity, that's such a hot topic these days. In other words, what you do with your mind changes your brain and then continues to really change and affect your body. You can train your body by what you do in your dream state. And if you're a singer, for instance, and you're involved in singing in your dream, your right hemisphere is active. If you're working on a math problem, and I don't know why anybody would do that in a lucid dream, but if you're working on logic or math in your dream, your left hemisphere is activated. So what you do in your dream state most certainly affects your body and your brain. And I mean, right there, you can start to see some of the amazing potentials. And I like to refer to the potentials of lucid dreaming as quite literally the pedagogy of the future. I mean, really, it's a way to potentially add a night shift or going to night school, where we spend in a 90-year life cycle, we spend about 7.5 years in the dream state. About 1 month every year is allocated to dreaming. So that's a lot of downtime. And if you can activate even a fraction of that time, think of how much you can learn, how much you can train, how much you can benefit by engaging in a state of consciousness that is otherwise pretty much lost to oblivion. So that's lucid dreaming. And again, we can talk so much more. I mean, there's so many benefits: healing benefits, creative benefits, psychotherapeutic benefits. But how it's different from dream yoga is that there's no overt kind of spiritual practice. No, soteriology is the word. No means of self transcendence. So while lucid dreaming can be the archetype, the ultimate in self-fulfillment, dream yoga is really about self-transcendence. So it's where you go deeper, further. You use the platform of lucidity, of lucid dreaming. In other words, dream yoga picks up where lucid dreaming leaves off. But instead of indulging your mind or even training it in these really notable psychological somatic ways, you use the mind in this still rarefied, refined form to transform the way we view mind and reality. And it therefore becomes a very profound spiritual transformative tool. And in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, it actually dream yoga came about principally from the Tibetan point of view as a way to prepare for death. So this is the fourth of the four types of nocturnal meditations. What's called Bardo Yoga, parenthetically, is the fruition of all the nocturnal meditations. And the last nocturnal practice that I should mention just for completeness is, so you have lucid dreaming, dream yoga. Dream yoga itself can mature and transform into what's called sleep yoga. And sleep yoga, which there's some very heavy-hitting scientists these days that are trying to prove it, just like lucid dreaming was proved. And I'm advising some of these teams right now. And the idea with lucid sleep is that you can maintain consciousness or awareness in the deep dreamless state. And this is, again, a classic practice in the Tibetan kind of pantheon of practices. And each one of these practices, you could say, transcends but includes its predecessor.
It sounds to me like the Russian dolls, and you mentioned them in the book,
Exactly.
that each one is inside of, okay, I can lucid dream, now let's start meditating while I'm in my lucid dream.
Yes, exactly. And Michael, as you know, why do you want to do that? Well, the literature is replete, the spiritual literature is replete with anecdotal evidence, and I guess as scientific as one could get from a spiritual perspective, that in the dream state, if you can engage in meditations, the meditation that you accomplish in your dream state is up to 9 times more effective and more transformative than what you do in the waking state. And really, it makes a lot of sense to me, because when you're working with the dream state, you're working with the unconscious mind. Consciousness is directly facing unconsciousness, and that's this hybrid state of consciousness is what makes it so transformative.
So unfortunately, I hate to even ask this. You say our dreams are truth tellers, and for myself, it is quite frequent that I have, how do I put it kindly, not so flattering dreams.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, any psychotherapist, let alone spiritual practitioner, and In the spiritual Tibetan Buddhist path, dream, the moniker for dream yoga is the measure of the path. What you're referring to is the psychological component of that. And every therapist, depth therapist, psychologist since Freud, basically, you could argue Freud discovered the unconscious mind for the West, will tell you that dreams are revelatory. They reveal the good, the bad, and the ugly. And very interesting, as one progresses along the psychological path, the spiritual path, you will notice that your dreams will mark your progress. I mean, they will show you where you are. They are truth tellers in that regard.
So Andrew, when we start getting these things, either gloom and doom dreams or you're not worthy dreams, and I'm a regular meditator who feels fairly even keeled, but my dreams are often wacky. Jessica, my wife, has these most amazing dreams. She, I don't know, saved this, flew there, did this amazing thing. And I'm like, no, I screwed everything up again. How do we start training this?
Well, one of the first things is exactly what you're exemplifying right here is you smile at the whole thing. You really have a tremendous sense of humor at what's being revealed. And then you also realize, you situate it, Michael, where you realize that what's being revealed, the good, the bad, and the ugly, initially what's revealed is the ugly and the bad, because those are the surface. If you look at the unconscious mind as a kind of a spectrum of consciousness, at the upper bandwidth of the spectrum, which is where dream yoga goes to work, which is where hypnosis goes to work, this is where the spiders and snakes of our rejected experience hang out. You may think you're getting rid of your experience when you disown it, reject it, but any therapist will tell you that ain't true. You're throwing it into your body-mind matrix, basically, and that's where it hangs out. So when you first start to explore this inner terrain, you're going to go to bed with spiders and snakes. But if you realize that's not who you are, if you realize that just exists on the surface chop, this kind of intermediate bandwidth below the conscious mind, if you understand that below that, and this is why I take great pains in my book to write about the map of the mind and how important it is to have this map, because that deterrent of the intermediate bandwidth of the unconscious mind, if you think that's all there is, why would anybody mess with this stuff? But if you realize, as the great spiritual traditions, really the world over will assert, who you really are is not the surface residue stuff. Who you really are is divine and perfectly pure and basically good, and the Buddha within. That's the real deepest strata of the unconscious mind that you're going to access with these practices.
So if you flip it on its head, and you talk a lot in the book about facing fear and shadow contents, you can actually go, I'm going into the spiders and snakes, so to speak, and I actually like spiders and snakes, but you're going in. Don't get me started on rattlesnakes, because I have a love affair with rattlesnakes.
Okay.
and they come out on the trails to see me. It's really cool.
Yeah, awesome.
But you can go into that world with a different mindset, which is, I'm going to face the fear, and I'm actually going to work on some self-improvement through this experience.
Exactly. Self-improvement and self-integration, because what happens in these dream states, and of course, this is what gives birth to nightmares. I mean, nightmares, in standard lucid dreaming, talks about this approach. Stephen LaBerge, who proved it, and then again, scientists in Germany are working with a lucid dreaming nightmare therapy. I mean, really what constitutes a nightmare is arguably rejected aspects of your experience, in many ways calling for integration in this kind of medium of experience. So if you do it, and this is another really practical thing about working with lucid dreams, if you're having a nightmare and you just run away from the nightmare, which is what most of us do, either running away from it in the state or running into waking consciousness, you're not resolving that disintegrated aspect of your psyche. It's really calling out for basically embrace. And if you don't understand that, and most people don't because they don't have a deeper view of their identity, you're going to be forever chased by these rejected aspects of your own body-mind. So if you have this understanding and you're in a nightmare, and there's some lucidity, nightmares are classic ways to bring about lucidity. What you can do then is, and it's one of the stages of not only lucid dreaming practice, but also dream yoga, you do the opposite of what you would normally do. In other words, instead of running away from the dream, which from the disowned aspects, which of course what? Just keeps those disowned aspects chasing you. You turn around, you face it, realizing, hey, what's really going on here? Is in fact this aspect of my being calling out for integration? Mm-hmm. If you turn around, face, and literally embrace this kind of demonic, monstrous psychic residue in your dream state, you will often find, and many lucid dreamers talk about it, the entity, the monster will stop, it'll lose something like dissolve into your heart, dissolve altogether. And in so doing, you're integrating these disintegrated aspects of your being, and lo and behold, the nightmare stops. So this idea of dreams as truth tellers, mm-hmm. It can also be really good news. All of a sudden you realize, hey, I haven't had a nightmare in 20 years. I haven't had a bad dream in 10 years. It's because your dreams are revealing the purification process that's taking place in your life practice, your life therapy, or whatever. And so working with dreams and understanding their benefits in this regard, it's not all bad news with dreams as being the measure of the path and markers of the path. There's a great deal of benefit of seeing this is in fact how my purification process is being revealed.
So let's dive into that. And I'm thinking, before we started this show last year, and the show's doing tremendously well, so maybe my dreams are doing better because of it. It used to seem like it was almost nightly that somebody was trying to murder me in my dreams. and I would literally wake up screaming, terrifying Jessica, because she couldn't decide. If she tried to wake me as I'm whimpering before I'm full on screaming, then I would tend to up the volume. So she's like, do I wake him, in which case he's going to scream? Do I not wake him, in which case he's going to scream? So, and she would tell me, you just need to face. Yeah, she'd go, what are you scared about? Well, this guy was going to kill me. Did he have a weapon? Did he have anything? No, I just felt it. Why didn't you turn around?
Exactly.
So, Andrew, what are the steps? How do we get into this so we can turn around?
Yeah, well, again, first and foremost is just what we're talking about. You have the view. You start to understand the larger framework. You reframe your relationship to the night altogether. You reframe your relationship to dreams and especially to unwanted dreams by having this larger, more sophisticated relationship of what's actually being revealed in the dream state.
So meaning having this conversation, understanding this communication right here.
Exactly. Understanding that fundamentally there's nothing to fear down there. It's just basically, it's fear of the dark. And darkness is a code word for ignorance, yes? So we're afraid of what we don't know. Mm-hmm. So if you realize, even at the level of the map, that fundamentally these unwanted, disintegrated aspect of your being, it's not fundamentally who you are. It's just aspects calling out for reintegration. If you understand that, even at the level of the map, all of a sudden, that helps you gain some confidence, some humor, some levity, to really start to approach these states as they are archetypally represented in the darkness of the night. And this is what is so cool to me. The darkness of the night is yet another iteration of this quality of the unknown aspect of our very being. And what we're trying to do, and hence the subtitle of my book, is we're trying to illuminate our lives by transforming our relationship to this archetypal expression of darkness or ignorance. So you have the map, you understand it, and then you go, well, I have nothing to fear. It's just my mind in there. And then you go a little bit deeper into the kind of the spiritual domain of the dream yoga tenets, and you realize that not only do you have nothing to fear, you have everything to look forward to in the darkness of the night. Because at the very core of your being, below the spiders and snakes I talk about, are the sages and saints. I mean, below that, who you really are is this divinity, the God within. Whatever terminology you want to use for any tradition doesn't really matter. If you realize in the core of your being, you understand that the basis of your being is this loving, beneficent, kind, basic goodness, then all the stuff that obscures it, by the way, is very effective. Fear is extraordinarily effective deterrent for the truth. And this is why I wrote my first book, The Power and the Pain, because when you start to get deeper into the truth, the barbed wire, the flaming torches, the spiders and snakes, all these unwanted aspects of your experience, they are going to come up because you're asking for it. It's like, as you know, Trungpa Rinpoche once beautifully, very famously once said, this applies to the dream yoga meditations altogether, where he said, meditation isn't a sedative, it's a laxative. So you get involved in deep meditation.
I call it a spiritual detox.
Exactly, and I use that image a great deal in my first book. In fact, when I did my 3-year retreat, which was a profoundly transformative experience, I absolutely felt like I was in a detox chamber for 3 years, no doubt. So again, if you hold this, you have a larger view, you reframe your understanding of mind, and you realize that, wow, man, there's an incredible wealth, a reservoir, and talk about natural resources. There is a gold mine of basic goodness and natural resources held within the core of my being and my heart. So that's where I go every night into the deep dreamless sleep. That's who I really am. And if you know that in your heart and you start to explore it in your daily meditations, you will start to change the way you relate to your mind as it's expressed in these otherwise dark stages. And you realize that the darkness is really pointing towards this light. That in itself is transformative. So now it's like, okay, bring it on. I get it. I'm going to go through
Bring it on, kind. I have an expression I have to include here. Bring it on, kind, gentle, easy, good.
Yes. Yeah. Haste slowly. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And then of course you do that because you're approaching these states, i.e., your mind, in a container of loving kindness, a container of humor, a container of affability, so that when the stuff arises, you really see it for what it is. You start to see through it. It no longer has the same power. It can arise, but it no longer has that same kind of deterrent power because you're no longer taking it to be so real. You're no longer taking it to be who you really are. And then these things that previously were so powerfully effective in terms of moving us away from truth, running away from potentials for growth, they now are seen as opportunities for growth. And that's the real key. You're transforming the obstacle into an opportunity. That's no small thing.
It's beautiful. I want to jump in a minute on how we start, or at least how we start the lucid dreaming aspect. But before that, I want you to clarify. I latched onto an idea which I don't think is correct, but maybe it is.
Okay.
Which is, it seems like the daytime preparation, meditation, all of this is essential for lucid dreaming or dream yoga, or maybe not. Could somebody say, I don't have time for an extensive practice in the daytime, I'm going to use the nighttime for my practice?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, exactly. Sure, you can do it just using a kind of nocturnal approach. I mean, what I try to do in the book is a fairly patient and exhaustive display of all the different skillful means that we have at our disposal. Because as I'm sure we're going to turn to this topic, one of the challenging things of lucid dreaming, of course, is the induction, actually having lucid dreams.
That's where I'd like to go next, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So you can totally do it. In fact, in classic lucid dreaming programs, which I've taught with lucid dream scholars of lucid dreaming and whatnot, there's no overt daytime meditation practice like I try to introduce. But at the same time, once again, if you have the view, why would one engage in daily meditation? Well, here's one very simple, very compelling reason, is that the reason we're non-lucid to our dreams at night, why are we non-lucid to our dreams at night? Because we're non-lucid to the contents of our mind during the day. It's like the poet Kabir said of death, also applies towards the nocturnal meditations. What is found then is found now. Or in this case, what is not found then is not found now. And some neuroscientists, Bruce Lipton and others, have gone so far as to say that the untrained mind is aware of about 1% of what actually takes place within it. And if you want to find out, again, the truth of that, just sit down, close your eyes, and look at your mind. We're pretty mindless beings. We're ensconced in a culture of mindlessness. We're infatuated and addicted with distraction. So it is the reason we engage, or one reason you might consider engaging in daily meditation, is that if you become lucid to the contents of your mind now, which is exactly what meditation is about, you will, by extension, naturally become lucid to the contents of that exact same mind as it's revealed in the medium of the night. So this is why many, many studies have shown that meditators have more lucid dreams. Advanced meditators have more lucid dreams. It makes total sense. And for the mind of an awakened one, a Buddha, a mind that is never distracted, that never strays, it never mindless, that mind is constantly lucid. Every dream is lucid. That mind never turns off. It's 24/7. It's on all the time. The body goes to sleep, yes. The mind maintains a level of awareness that never dissolves. And that's the mind of an awakened one.
It begets the question, and I don't want to stray too far from the how-to, but it really begets the question of, am I going to be exhausted doing this? If the mind is working 24/7, and part one of our theories is that the mind is doing a detox during the evening, it's plugging back in, recharging and detoxing, and now we're cranking it. I guess what we're really talking about is a bigger mind.
Yes, exactly. Well said. Yeah, the reason these practices do not exhaust the mind if the practices are done properly is that one of the things that exhausts the conventional mind is this insatiable grasping. Again, just look at your mind. A thought arises, and how often does that thought just fly through your mind like a campfire spark fading into the night? That hardly ever happens. We unconsciously, non-lucidly, throw the gasoline of our awareness onto that. Whoosh, we're lost in discursive fantasy, distracted, mindless thought constantly. So as that mind becomes more refined, more trained, it no longer grasps at all these things that are thrown up by the mind. You mentioned at the outset the idea of going to the dog park. That's where the theme of the book comes from. The idea of that you're throwing sticks out, the dog, different story, but the mind is always chasing after the sticks of the mind. That's exhausting. So as the mind becomes more spacious, as you alluded to, the mind becomes bigger. The Zen folks talk about big mind. As the mind gets bigger and bigger and bigger, those same thoughts continue to arise. You just don't find yourself chasing after them. If you don't chase after them, the conventional mind no longer gets exhausted. If the conventional mind no longer gets exhausted, at the ultimate levels, it no longer needs to sleep. So the awakened mind, once again, the mind of a Buddha, doesn't need to sleep because it doesn't wipe itself out running after things all the time. So the image I use, imagine that you're doing curls all day long at the gym. That's what we're doing. We're doing curls all day long. We don't even know it. So goodness gracious, at the end of the night, we're wiped out. If you're no longer doing those curls, there's no reason for the mind to be fatigued. The mind no longer needs to sleep. I mean, my teacher, Khenpo Rinpoche, always talked about this wonderful summary statement about the mind should be open, spacious, relaxed. A mind that's open, spacious, and relaxed never gets tired. And that's really what we're doing with these practices, increasing that spaciousness, increasing that relaxed quality, and then eventually benefiting from all the aspects of awareness and maturation that are born from that.
From what your teacher said, it's really flipping things on its head, which is to understand that the awake world is a dream world and not to get too attached to any piece of it. Because tomorrow you're going to realize just how much of a dream quality yesterday had.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the exercises I offer in the book. It's very interesting. Look at yesterday from today's perspective. What we lived yesterday felt so bloody real, but from the perspective of today, it's as solid as a dream. Now look at today from the perspective of tomorrow, and you start to bring that same sense of levity, that same sense of liberation by freeing this reifying, grasping, inappropriate relationship we have to the contents of our mind. So that's really what, in so many ways, that's what I like to emphasize with these practices is there's so much more than what you're doing at the night. You're using the mind as it's revealed in the medium of the night to transform the day, to transform your life altogether. And then really what happens is scientists use this term bidirectionality. By engaging in these practices, you're opening a two-way street of communication. It's there anyway, it just doesn't flow with lucidity. The backstage mind and the onstage mind, they're always having conversations, but usually one aspect of that mind isn't really listening to the other. So what we do with these meditations is we're opening up this bidirectional aspect of mind so that, we work with the conscious mind to plant seeds for the unconscious mind. We work directly with the unconscious mind in dream and sleep practices to upload information into the conscious state. And hence, by opening these levels and avenues of communication, now you're really unleashing the potentials of the mind. And again, what I think is really worth stressing is the reason these practices are so transformative is that backstage always runs on stage. The unconscious mind runs what happens in the conscious life. Even Freud had this iceberg theory of consciousness. So when you engage in these practices, you are working, mixing metaphors, you're working with the tectonic plates of your experience. And what you do down there has a monumental impact on what happens up here. You make a small shift down there in this strata of your being, just like a literal earthquake, and the surface implications are profound. And this is what is so exciting about this field, is that you do not have to be an every night lucid dreamer to reap the rewards of these practices, because you're working so directly with backstage. You can affect on stage powerfully with just one lucid dream. And I have had many dreams in my life, some of them 40 years ago, that continue to inform my life even today.
Awesome.
So that's one of the really cool parts about this stuff.
It makes me think of Matrix learning, Neo learning kung fu, or learning to fly, or his partner learning to do the helicopter. So let's dive in. Let's talk first essential ingredients for lucid dreaming, and then how we actually do this. And last night before I went to bed, I kept my computer on so that I could get up in the middle of the night and jot down my dreams. So what are these first few steps, the essential ingredients?
Yeah, cool. I always add more. There are three classic ones, but I continue to add more. One of them, and again, I'm saying this somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but I'm also being ironically very serious, is that one of the most important ingredients with this stuff, Michael, is a sense of humor. You got to enjoy this stuff. You can't be too tight. And consequences, both on-ramp and off-ramp, one of the consequences of this practice is definitely increased sense of levity and humor and playfulness. So I think that in itself is very helpful. Yes, there's a little bit of effort involved. Yes, you have to work with some of these other things we can talk about. But if you hold the whole thing with this embrace of levity and humor, trust me, it will go a long way. But classically, first thing is increasing your sense of intention or motivation. Anybody can do this. In fact, colloquially, if you have to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning and you ain't got an alarm clock, you set a strong intention. How often will that actually happen? So we're going to set an alarm clock of intention by saying throughout the day, and especially as we're going to sleep, don't just flap your lips. Deliver it, with your heart. Really say to yourself with authority and conviction, yeah, tonight I'm going to have many dreams. I do this every night. I'm going to have many dreams. I'm going to have good dreams. I'm going to remember my dreams. I'm going to wake up in my dreams. And you really mean it, because what you're doing in the etymology of the word intention intimates this. Intention means to stretch towards. Mm-hmm. So you are stretching, and this is an interesting allusion to the yoga aspect, stretching the conscious mind into previously unconscious states through the power of intention. This is no small thing. So whatever you can do throughout the day, especially when you're going in tonight, you want to ramp it up a little bit, like a little quote-unquote sprint. It's almost a paradox, sprint to the finish line. Ramp up the intention, saying, you know what? Yes, tonight I will absolutely wake up in my dreams. That in itself is huge. So the second thing is developing dream recall, increasing your ability to remember your dreams. And a lot of that, of course, is also facilitated by intention, saying, we have at least minimum of 6 dreams every night, usually 6 to 12, if not more. So if you're not remembering your dreams, you can develop that capacity. We can cultivate the kind of memory muscle of the mind. So there's several ways to do this. Intention is one. Setting a dream journal at the side of your bed, like you're doing with your computer, and starting to write down any snippet of the dream. Mm-hmm. Taking advantage in particular, and this is where understanding the science of sleep cycles is incredibly important. We go through a series of 5 or 6 sleep cycles a night. The first part of the night is mostly non-REM restorative sleep. Don't mess with that unless you're doing sleep yoga, different topic there. Primetime dream time is about 2 hours before you wake up. So what you want to do is you want to really ramp your efforts during that primetime dream time. So that's that. Second component is working with increasing dream recall. And then really these are, there's so many things to talk about here, Michael. In terms of actual technique, to bring about lucidity in addition to that is increasing good sleep hygiene. Mm-hmm. This is both kind of classic psychological sleep hygiene and spiritual sleep hygiene. And there are a number of ways to do that. One is about an hour or so before you go to sleep, get away from your computer screen, get away from your iPhone. The light of these screens can inhibit the release of what's called the Dracula hormone, of course, which is melatonin. It can kind of interrupt your sleep process. If you're involved in any type of spiritual or contemplative practice, settling the mind in a kind of a mind scanning phase or a meditative phase, I do this every single night, kind of sliding off the on-ramp, getting off the freeway of daily life slowly, and really kind of, I like to use the word perfuming the dream state. Mm-hmm. With your intention, by honoring the potential, by kind of really changing the way you really, because really, again, one of the biggest reasons we don't have a proper relationship to lucid dreaming, let alone dreams altogether, is in the Western culture, Western world altogether, we tend to dismiss the power of our dreams. So you want to increase relationship to this quality of your mind. You want to honor it more. You want to just pay more respect to it by engaging in these processes. And then really one of the most effective techniques during the night is what's called the wake and back to bed technique. Some studies have shown that it can increase lucidity up to 20-fold or to 2,000% increase by waking up about 2 hours or so before you would normally wake up. Again, that's primetime dream time. You're mostly in REM sleep then. That's why we tend to remember most of our dreams in the morning.
So it could be setting an alarm, for instance, 2 hours early.
This case, literally setting an alarm. Mm-hmm. Setting an alarm 2 hours before, waking up, staying up for about 15 minutes to half an hour. During that time, read about lucid dreaming, read about dream yoga, do some induction techniques. Proper, don't turn on your computer. Notice a tendency to go to your phone or your computer. Don't do that. And then simply go back to sleep because that's when dreams are really cooking. And you can play, if you're not having overt lucid dreams, you can play, and this is a wonderful sidebar topic we could get into or not, you can start to play with these what are called hypnagogic hypnopompic states, which are like the pre and post dream states. Amazing fertile ground where consciousness is dipping in and out of waking and dreaming. And again, if you understand what's happening, you can start to really explore this dimension of your being.
I found it fascinating that the painter Dali, because a hypnagogic state is something I use for implanting programming in my mind. Perfect. That he balanced, what was it, a spoon on his chest, so that if the spoon, I guess, presumably fell, he realized he had fallen too deep asleep. And if he could balance that, he could stay in that kind of twilighty state. Everything's melting on him, so to speak.
Exactly, and that's why I refer to Dali. I love his work. He is definitely a surrealist. I refer to him as a bardo artist. Bardo literally means gap or transitional process. And here, Dali, as being a bardo artist, he's trolling between the conscious and the unconscious mind. And he tapped, like you were alluding to, into a lot of his inspiration by dipping into this intermediate bandwidth with this particular technique. And with practice, we can do exactly the same things. I mean, this alludes to yet another amazing benefit of these practices, which is the nurturing, the cultivating of creativity. Many, many artists have done that. And then one last little thing you can do here, a trick that for me really works, is to play with a supplement. It's called galantamine.
I got this supplement years ago. I actually got it. I don't know. I don't understand something Africa, even though you talk about it being more, I guess, German or something of that sort. I got this supplement in, and then I scared myself and didn't take it. Oh. And it sat in my kitchen cupboards for years going, if I tape that stuff, I might not sleep, I might not this. I wasn't even ready to face the fear of facing my fears.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's totally safe. I've been working with it. I don't use it all the time, but let me just say a wee bit about it for those who have this kind of predisposition. Galantamine is a naturally occurring substance. You can get it in most natural grocers and that kind of thing. You can also order it online. It has the ability to inhibit an enzyme that is involved in the breakdown of a neurotransmitter. It's called acetylcholine that's in high concentration when you're dreaming. In other words, when you're dreaming, this neurotransmitter is cooking. So what galantamine does is it keeps that concentration high, so it's not broken down. And when I have used this stuff, it's like rocket fuel for the dream state. It may not overtly bring about lucidity, but what it does is it brings about a tremendous clarity in the dream state. 4 to 8 milligrams taken when you wake up in this 2-hour before rising period is, in my experience, phenomenally effective. There are, virtually side effects in this are almost unheard of. Some people do have very rare side effects. I still endorse it, not as a principal approach, but as a supplemental approach for people who have connections with this type of mild psychopharmacological approach to dreaming. So it's just a way to play with it. There are other things, of course, the lucid dreaming goggles. I mean, that's the cool thing about this stuff now, Michael, is that there are so many different tips and tricks to bring about lucidity, and they're unfolding as we speak.
Let's talk about state check, because I want to get this one down. I used to actually have software on my computer that would pop up once an hour and say, "Am I dreaming?" And you were supposed to check your watch, and if you check your watch twice, and at one point it's 1:57, and the next it's 1111 or something, you're in a dream. So yesterday I started, after reading your book, I'd walk around and then I go jump.
Yeah, cool. I do that all the time. Yeah.
Am I dreaming? And I guess if I'm in a dream and I do that, I float away or I fall through the floor or something fun.
Yeah, this is a good one. So this idea of state checks was really principally developed by a German, Paul Tillet, German lucid dream researcher who died. And he came up with this, when you think about all these techniques, the logic behind them is so sound, it's so compelling. And that's why it's so helpful to understand, well, why do you do this? Why do you do that? And obviously I go through great pains in my book to explain this. But the idea of doing state checks is the reason, again, one of the principal reasons we don't recognize our dreams to be dreams is we don't question the status of their reality. It's just like we do not develop what Paul Tillet referred to as a critically reflective attitude. We don't question authority. There's that bumper sticker. We don't question authority. A pink elephant walks into the dream, and you just accept it. Hey, why are you doing that? Because you're not training your mind to check, to critically evaluate what's happening. So the reason you do this during the day, these state checks, is by starting to critically assess whether you're awake or asleep now. And you do this in conjunction with what are called dream signs. So that's yet another topic to play with here that's very compelling. A dream sign, you'll see how this all ties in. A dream sign is just what it sounds like. It's something in the daily experience that happens that just is weird. It doesn't fit. It's like a dream. Like if we were to sit here right now and you were to see a bird fly behind me or a book fall off the shelf. That's a little odd. It's a little weird. So what you do with dream signs during the day is you sensitize yourself. You create the habit. In spiritual terms, you create the karma. Habit's just karma. You create the habit of whenever anything weird happens during the day, you conduct a state check. I have done this for so long, it's just automatic for me. So I'm sitting, a bird hits the window, I automatically do a state check. And for me, the one that I do is the one you referred to, is I just jump up. Because if I jump up and I'm dreaming, chances are pretty good I'll keep going. So if I jump up and I come back down, chances are pretty good I'm awake. So I do this all the time now. I'm just so sensitized to it. Whenever anything weird happens, I do a state check. Well, lo and behold, through the power of habit, you're using habit in your favor here, i.e. karma in your favor. Now when that weird thing happens in your dream, and what is one of the characteristics of a dream? They're filled with dream signs. They're filled with incongruities and disjointed, and they're dreamlike. If you start to challenge, question strange events during the day, just like with the meditation practice I talked about earlier, you will naturally start to challenge and question these things when they happen at night. And when you do the state check, the jumping up or looking at something and looking back, when you do that at night, lo and behold, you will keep going, and that's it, you're in. And I have used the jumping up and down one hundreds, if not thousands of times to bring about lucidity in the dream state. So these are extremely effective ways to work with your reality now to transplant these habits and insights during the day naturally into the dream state so that this dreamscape that you would otherwise accept for however weird it is, you just accept it. You don't challenge it. All of a sudden you become more critically reflective. And the minute that happens, that quality of mind will bring about lucidity with such dependence and regularity that it's an astoundingly capable tool.
Once we're awake, clearly we can have fun with this. We can fly around in our dreams. We can put our hands through walls. Where would you have people start to work on either improving themselves or letting go of themselves? Where is hey, I managed to get through the door. Where do I go from here?
Yeah. Again, here, Michael, it's very important, I think, for people to go through some kind of at least understand the kind of stages. Because really, when you first get in a lucid dream, there's nothing like a lucid dream. I mean, if you've never had one, it's almost like you're not having an orgasm. You kind of got to have one to know what it's like. And this is why these lucid dreams, like, it doesn't take a whole lot to say, like, I am a lucid dream junkie here, because it's such a compelling, powerful state. So I always recommend when people start that they literally in the first stages just enjoy themselves. Go for a flight. I love to fly. Do things that are really just enjoyable. And then eventually what happens with people that have some regular lucidity, almost always they will say, just like your question alluded to, okay, well, what's next? What can I do? And then I go through in the book, I think 9 or 10 different stages as one continues to kind of work with the mind, the yoga aspect. And the one that you referred to that I like very much, I think it's like my stage 2, I believe, is to come up against a dream wall and try to put your hand through the dream wall. Well, okay, that's why. Where do you do that? Well, it's highly revelatory. It will show you, and this is where now even with the second stage, we're starting to transition from classic lucid dreaming to dream yoga. So what this reveals to you is it reveals the reifying, the word is reifying, this solidifying tendency that we all have. And I invite people to take a very close look at their experience and see if in fact it is not true that the reason we have so much trouble in this life is we take the contents of our mind, our emotions, our moods, our thoughts, and by extension our world to be so bloody real, so solid, lasting, independent, and therefore heavy. It's like the opposite of enlightenment. It's endarkenment. It's this heavy, reifying, concretizing state. We all just naturally do it. So the why you want to do this in the dream is you want to start to realize that, first of all, you're bringing this habit into the dream state, and you're starting to soften the contents of your world by working with these types of practices in your dream. And then, the extension of that is, if you start to work with your mind by putting your hand through the dream wall, the other technique here is like a Castaneda, extension of a Castaneda technique. You look at your hand in the dream, and then you say, okay, I want 5 of these. You want to multiply 5 hands. Why are you doing that? Well, fundamentally, when you're working with dream yoga, when you're working with your dreams, what are you fundamentally really doing? You're working with your mind. You're working with your mind as it's revealing itself in this form. So as you start to discover the malleable, the fluid, the changeable, the de-reified aspect of mind as it's revealed in the dream state, you bring that insight back into the world, and all of a sudden that heavy depression isn't so real anymore. That anger that seems so solid is as solid as that dream wall. So by working with your mind in the dream state, you come back to the waking state, and all of a sudden these contents of mind that previously were so heavy, all of a sudden they don't have that type of reality anymore. They're still there. You're not getting rid of them. That's the near enemy of nihilism, spiritual bypassing. These are some of the subtle traps of these practices. But you realize you don't have to be weighed down by the contents of your mind. That is an enormous insight. Depression only has the power you give it. Anger only has the power that you impute upon it. And if you start to de-reify by changing your relationship through the contents of your mind, as in this case is being expressed in the dream, bring that insight back into the day, and lo and behold, watch how your day starts to change.
Woohoo!
Yeah, exactly. Woohoo! So it still happens, the depressive thought might still arise. You see through it. You develop these kind of X-ray eyes. Anger, passion, whatever, all these poisonous qualities of mind, they still arise. They don't have the same power over you because you've seen through the contents of your mind.
Beautiful. We've got to start to wrap things up slowly here.
Sure.
We may have to have you back on because there's so much to cover.
Oh,
One
yeah,
thing I mentioned early in the show was, and this I guess applies more to dream yoga, or actually the illusory body in illusory form. Why do we want to blame ourselves and give ourselves the finger?
Well, there you go, Michael. Let's just take something totally out of context.
Why not?
You'd be a great politician, man.
Oh, no. I do not take that as a compliment, but thank you.
So what Michael's referring to here is that there is a particular set of practices that on first glance can seem like quite ludicrous. But what they refer to is standing in front of a mirror. And again, trust me, when I first did this, believe it or not, I did this in the third year of my 3-year retreat. So I'm supposed to be a so-called advanced retreatant. And we are instructed to do in this practice what's called illusory form, as you alluded to. Illusory form is the daytime analog of the daytime practice for dream yoga, and we could say so much about that. But in a nutshell, one aspect of illusory form is to go in front of a mirror and to look at this reflection. And the first thing you do is you just praise it, and just simply notice like what comes up. It's contrived, it's artificial. Yes, yes, yes. But you go in front of the mirror, you praise yourself. You're just the most amazing. You're God's gift. Just fill in the blank, and simply just notice how this response, so to speak, from to and from the mirror affects you. How it might elevate you. And then you do the opposite. Then you flip yourself off in the mirror, you curse yourself, and again, you play with the emotional response in this completely contrived and artificial way. And you realize it's just this stupid reflection praising me. It's just this ridiculous reflection flipping me off. And I have to tell you, Michael, when I first did it, I resisted it. I said, this is like beyond stupid. But I had to do it for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I figured, okay, I might as well get into it. I cannot tell you, outside of the first couple hours of incredible self-consciousness, which itself was revelatory, is how it started to change me. Because when I left my retreat, it was a group retreat. I had to interact with others. And when you're in an intense contemplative practice environment like that, everything is amplified, let me tell you. So coming out, all of a sudden, I started, somebody wouldn't literally flip me off in retreat, but they do now in the world when I cut them off or whatever. The residue of that practice started to affect the way I would look at the guy flipping me off on the road. It's like, oh, that's just like the guy that flipped me off in the mirror. In other words, the idea is that if you really look at the nature of mind and reality, everything is as thick and as real, in other words, unreal or illusory or dreamlike, as that reflection in the mirror. It has that same level of substance. And by working in this almost patronizingly silly way with this reflective quality of reality, believe it or not, it will start to haunt you in your daily life. And the fruition of this, as it is for dream and sleep yoga, I should say dream yoga and illusory form altogether, is to transcend hope and fear, and all the progeny, or we'll call the 8 worldly prisons, praise and blame, fame and shame, pleasure and pain, loss and gain. By working with these practices, using the mirror, using reflective body, you will start to see that all manifest reality is as thick or as existent, non-existent as that same reflection. It still appears. This is important. You're not dismissing it. It still appears. People still appear. The finger still appears. It just doesn't have the same substantive power that it previously had. So once again, just like in the dream state, you're starting to elusify. It's not the word, but you get it. You're starting to de-reify.
Hmm.
You're starting to see the true dream-like nature of reality. And this is a great way to end, kind of segue to what we started with. What is it that a Buddha awakens from? What is it that a Buddha awakens to? A Buddha, he or she, wakes up from a projected, reified world of duality that's solid, lasting, and independent. In other words, what we perceive to be real. That's what they wake up from. They wake up to a reality that by nature is fluid, illusory, malleable, dream-like. So they wake up from what we would take as our reality into a dream-like state. And then there, the consequences, as we've been kind of circumambulating, are enormous. I mean, think about it. Literally everything lightens up when you say it's just a dream. It's still there. It still appears.
Row your boat.
Exactly. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I had just a few quick wrap-up questions for you, and then maybe time for a very short meditation. First off, what would you tell parents for their kids about dreaming, or guidance for their kids with dreams?
Oh, beautiful. Yes. Well, the Sonoy, the culture of the Sonoy in Malaysia, fascinating culture to study. They have such a beautiful relationship to their dreams. Every morning at breakfast, the family gets together, and the first question, and I do this with my partner, first thing in the morning is like, what did you dream? Every morning, how were your dreams? So with your children, encourage the dream state. Lucidity is pretty high with children. It tends to decrease around 7, which is around where formal operational thinking comes in. Very interesting. It decreases even further in the teens, but young children tend to have a lot more lucid dreams than adults. Support that lucidity. Increase a relationship of honoring and respecting the dream state. And by so doing, you're nurturing a quality of experience that can be of monumental benefit as the child continues to mature, taking increased sense of refuge in all the capabilities and potentials that arise in the dream state.
Beautiful. Thank you. A question we like to ask all our guests just before the end. What personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
So, is this a rhetorical question? Or
No, I'm asking.
For me?
Yes. What brings you that woohoo?
For me, woohoo is like waking up. For me, that's what it is. That woohoo experience for me is seeing through the facade, cutting through, pulling back the curtain, the Toto. It's a great The Wizard of Oz, pulling back the curtain to realize really what's going on here. And when you do that, it's like, woohoo! Wow, I did not have to take this world to be this bloody nightmare that I otherwise projected to be.
Love it. So where can people go to find out more and to find your book?
Yeah. Well, obviously, you can get the book through Amazon. Sounds True is my publisher. I love working with them. You can get it through them. Those are obviously, you can get it through any noble bookstore these days. It's readily available. It was just released, so thank you for that plug. I also do, referring people to my website, andrewholacek.com. I do, especially this year with this book. This is the first of 2 books. I'm writing a follow-up book. I'll be working quite a bit around the world, actually, on dream yoga, lucid dreaming programs. So those are the 2 principal ways.
What's your website URL?
andrewholacek.com. So AndrewHolacek, andrewholacek.com. I mean, really, these days, if you just Google Dream Yoga, I seem to pop up on the first page. So that'll probably get you to me.
Fantastic. So. And if you don't remember Dream Yoga and you're driving down the road, just go over to inspirenationshow.com. We'll get you over to Andrew as well. Last question before a real brief meditation. Any last words of wisdom that you'd want to share with people?
Oh, words of wisdom. Just celebrate the expression of your mind. Celebrate who you are. Realize that however your mind shines, that's the way you started the program. However your mind shines, it's something that really should be treasured and celebrated, and it only becomes a problem if you solidify it. So if you let it shine, if you let yourself shine without taking yourself, others, and this world too seriously, you are firmly on the path of enlightenment.
Woohoo! I like you, Andrew.
Thank you, Michael.
So do you have a brief meditation you'd like to share with people?
Yeah. Let me think here for just a second. Yeah, let me just do a very brief guided practice. And we got a little bit windy just because of this wonderful enthusiasm towards this topic. But as a way to unwind, to unwind, perhaps we could close our eyes for just a second. It helps initially to kind of settle the energy, settle the winds, settle the mind. Take a few slow, deep breaths, and I often like to refer to the path of enlightenment, which is often colloquially talked about as waking up, which has its place. I prefer to use the term waking down to the wisdom of your body, the wisdom of your deepest mind as it's embodied in the core of your body. This is a great, I do some version of this every night when I go to sleep as my spiritual sleep hygiene. If I'm lying down, I'll rest my hands. You can do it now. Rest my hands. It's like cradling my belly. It brings the winds down into my body. And then there's a very, very simple but incredibly compelling and profound practice of lucidity. Is simply with this kind of background of settled stability, this kind of canvas. You are now better able to be lucid to what arises in your mind, a thought, image, anticipation. Whenever anything arises in your mind, just like in a dream, you can simply say to yourself, whenever something pulls you away from your body and your breath, simply say to yourself, wake up. Come back to your body and your breath. Wake up. That simple gesture of recognition is the practice of lucidity. You are becoming awake to, lucid to, the contents of your mind. And in so doing, you will, I promise you, become lucid to your dreams. Wake up. There we go, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Andrew. This was beautiful. Got to crank it back up for the finish now. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get dream yoga, wake down to play in the night, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you.
You're the best. That was really fun. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And I'm gonna be practicing.
Cool.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!